So, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya.
Jai Guru Raya. So, I would like to ask you, Ma, first of all, thank you so much for being here and accepting to answer a few questions. I really admire your journey and I love this place, this ashram of Yogi Ramsuratkumar. So, would you like to tell us what happened when you met your guru, Yogi Ramsuratkumar?
Well, that is a big story. I always had a fascination for those saints and sages. So, from my childhood, I was drawn to God and the great Mahatmas. So, wherever I came to hear about a Mahatma, I would immediately rush there, have my darshan, and take blessings from them. This was so much a habit of mine that people used to make fun that I was a saint monger. I had taken initiation from a very great soul, Swami Vireshwarananda from Krishna Mat, Belur Mat, who was the direct disciple of Sharda Mani Devi, the divine consort of Ramakrishna Paramhamsa. I was very, very happy that it happened. And I went all the way to Belur Mat to take it. And I had many miracles happened around that. And there are many details. But 3 months after he attained Mahasamadhi. So I was there the right time to do that. Thanks to one senior Swami of Ramakrishna Mat, Mailapur, and Swami Tanmayanandaji, it is he who made me go all the way and take it. I'm ever thankful to him for that. And it left a vacuum. I needed a physical guru to refer to interact with, to have darshan. No. So I was missing, and there was something in the mind, it was becoming very restless. And that is when somebody came and gave me a book of Ramana. So I started to read it. And I was absolutely fascinated by Ramana's personality and his teachings. So that's how the affair started. And then I plunged deeply into that. And I started to read one book after the other, voraciously. Then the desire came to come to Tiruvannamalai. I have a darshan of the Samadhi of Ramana Bhagwan and sit there. And that's how the whole thing started. So there were 3 days, Christmas holidays. I was already working in Sharada College, Salem, as a physics lecturer. And 3 days we got as Christmas holidays. So 2 other friends, colleagues of mine, the 3 of us came to Tiruvannamalai. There is a particular part which I have to convey. When we reached there, it was only 7:30 or so in the evening, and it was 86 December. And in those days, there were hardly any bulbs burning. If there was one there, I remember vaguely, that was also not burning. And then the whole Ramanashram had plunged in darkness. Maybe the current was cut off or something. And I felt terrible. I was just standing there right at the doorstep, and I was confronted with darkness everywhere. It seemed very symbolic to me, and something burst out inside. I ran all the way to the meditation hall of Ramana Bhagwan, saw one picture, and Ramana Bhagwan's photo was there, and there was a small mud lamp burning and throwing some light on the photograph. But I just couldn't contain myself and burst out crying, saying, Ramana, you are the huge sun of knowledge. But even here, there is only darkness for me. Will there be no light at all in my life? And then I started to sob, cry loudly, unable to contain. And that's when the miracle happened. Suddenly, the two eyes of Ramana alone in the photograph began to glow with life. And there was such compassion and grace. Just for a fraction of a second, his gaze was right upon me, penetrating into the recesses of my being, and I was arrested. I had no idea what happened. I just stood there, transfixed, looking at his eyes, and suddenly the lights came on. And he was once again the photograph. But my heart was filled with such glowing light of Ramana and Ananda. And I felt reassured that there would be light in life. And it would be no ordinary light either. So I was very happy. I had no idea what was going to happen. And then the next day morning, the three of us started for going round, the Arunachala Pradakshina, 14 kilometers. I had already heard about Yogi Ramsuratkumar from a student of mine who had come to him, and she reported, said there is a very beggarly, a man who looks like a beggar, a dirty beggar at that, but he speaks like a professor. And he speaks such good English, and he's so vibrant. I had heard it, but there was no thought of meeting him or anything particularly, because I was completely taken over by Ramana. Now the next day morning when we were going, after we finished Pradakshina, we were coming through the town. Suddenly the thought struck me that I could go, it's only on the way. So I went and stood before. It was locked. So a boy came running saying that Swami, they call him Swami. It's actually Swami. So the boy said, Swami had just gone to the temple. Just left. Then immediately we ran to the temple, only to be told Swami had just left the temple. So we completed the round. We had bought some coconut, tender coconuts for offering. Finally, we drank up the whole coconut water and came back. And then again, evening, of course, we were not going round the mountain, but we came particularly now to see him because, something has happened, something has changed in me. I had to see him. So came second time, again it was locked. And somebody came and told he had just left. So immediately we rushed to the temple only to be told again that he had just left the temple. So this Leela continued again the next day morning and evening. So 4 times over. And the third day was again morning. Again we had 2 tender coconuts in hand. And then we approached only to be confronted with the locked door again. And again the same story. They just left for the temple, and he had just left the temple when we reached there. So same Leela, repeated 5 times. It aroused not only my curiosity, but a great longing in me to see him. The longing was getting sharpened every time I was denied his darshan. Finally, when the evening came, I said, come, let's go. It's a living master. It's a rare opportunity. But the 2 people who came with me backed out, saying, every time we go only to see a locked door. Swami does not want to see us. So why we go again? I said, no, we have to try. We have one more chance. We will try as much as we can, the allotted time. So I dragged them on with me, and again I stopped just outside. I bought some apples. I said, let's buy something. They said, no. Every time we buy something and then we end up eating it ourselves, so we're not going to buy. So I said, fine, I'm going to do it. And then when we came, it was open, not only open, there was a crowd also outside. So we joined very happily that now I was assured of his darshan. And then, it's a detail after. But I will describe up to a certain point. He came, when he was coming out, there was a wooden door and a small veranda, and then a grill gate. I saw him opening the wooden door, and as he came into the veranda, there was a huge presence, a very vibrant presence, which hit me with a force. My whole body began to tremble, and tears were streaming down, and I had no idea. I was gaping. I was yet to see him. He had come into the darkness of the veranda. It was semi-darkness. And then as he came and opened the door, by then my eyes were filled with tears and it was streaming down. And I was trembling, forgot everything else. I was looking, gaping at him. And very quickly he came, dismissed everybody, saying, Ram, Ram, my father blesses you, this and that, and the whole crowd dispersed. Only the three of us were left behind. And then he said, come. So we went and stood there, and he looked at us, and then he opened the gate. He said, come inside. I never expected that. He thought he was going to dismiss us also. So we went into the veranda. I was carrying those apples, and I was trembling so much because of more nearness now. And I dropped everything. All the apples were rolling on all sides. What a clumsy meeting. They were rolling in all directions. And, that was the first time I was able to see him, but I could not note down the details because of the power of his presence. He shouted, pick them up. So immediately, very clumsily, I started to gather. I had only bought 4 apples. After that, he opened the wooden door. He went inside, calling us inside, which we never expected. Then, when I went inside, that was another shock, because the place looked like a dumping ground. And there were books scattered here and there in the newspaper, and then the cigarette boxes, a heap of it in one corner, and then the matchboxes in another corner, the coins, and people would have brought some offerings, and all the offerings, the rupee notes were all heaped up in one place for all the people to see. 2 rupees, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, and then 4 annas, 8 annas, all those coins and this thing that was there. And he had spread 3 mats there. The mats had more holes than mat, and they were also filled with the dust. And all around, so many things were scattered. There was one heap of bottles from small size to the biggest size, and there was a mud pot, and then there was an old aluminium small vessel like a mug, a dipper. And then there were 3 people seated already. He took us to the next one. There were pillars, and then there was one compartment. He said, you 3 sit here. And I saw, I had just a glimpse of a chair, it's a cane chair, and it looked so bad and old and wobbly. Just for a moment, a passing thought, how could anybody sit in this? He went straight to the chair and brought it near and put it right in front of me and sat like an emperor like this. The Dakshinamurti. He just sat like this, and there was this green turban, like a diadem, and then the colored shawls on him. And then he just sat there like this, and I was still gaping. And he asked for our names. And then he looked straight into my eyes and said, what do you want? I was already planning to get my PhD, to admit myself to some university, and I wanted to work in some famous laboratories. So this was my dream. But here, when he asked me, what do you want? I said, I want to see God. I had no idea I was going to say that at all. It was inspired by his very presence. Then, as soon as he heard, he said, what? You want to see God? Oh, God. He put his hand on his head. What a fate. And then he started to slap his thighs, very boisterously, and there were three people. Do you know what she wants? She wants to see God. Oh God. And he repeated the gesture, and again he was laughing, laughing, laughing. Peals of cascading laughter. He could not stop himself, and at my expense, he was asking the next person and the next person, and every time he repeated, she wants to see God. Oh God. And then he turned to me and said, how can this beggar help you? This beggar has not seen God. How can he help you? And then I was saying, no, I just seeing the whole drama, of course, which never seemed like a drama to me. It was all so vibrant, godly, and something out of this world totally for me. So I was getting absorbed in that. I was also crying because he was making fun of me. And I thought I had committed a terrible blunder of my life because I had no qualification even to put forth such a wish. That I must have been a very, very lowly being, that I should not have mentioned it at all to him. And that brought more tears and more sobs. And then what happened, he again looked straight at me. He saw my condition. He said, this beggar has not seen God. But Devaki is a pure soul. She will see God. This beggar has not seen God. He cannot help you. But you are a pure soul. You will see God. Immediately, the lady was sitting next to me. It was all, she had come to him before. She knew his ways. Somehow inspired by the whole thing, she said, Swami, we do not know whether we are pure or not. Now that you have said it, now that the word has come out of your mouth, we have become pure from this moment. She did not say she said we. We have become pure from this moment. And that did something to him. His whole attitude from fun and frolic changed into something very serious. His whole face became radiant. And then with a hunkar, he raised his hand, and then he looked deeply into me, and he kept blessing, blessing. I had no idea how many minutes passed, and I had no idea when I stopped crying, and I felt every pore of my being, not just the body, the whole unit of being, filled with a very blissful peace, a very deep, deep, deep peace. All thoughts had dropped off completely, and there was only this peace and bliss. So overwhelming. I was completely drowned in it, drunk with it. And I had no idea how many minutes passed, and then suddenly he brought it down and started to slap his thigh, and again began to make fun of me, saying that, oh, she wants to see God, this beggar has not seen God, and this and that. But this time I had completely changed. Nothing mattered to me. I began to witness everything. It was just a witness, already filled with bliss and peace of the bliss and peace of the being, and I just only everything became a wonder. Everything seemed shiny, and there was just wonder and beauty, and peace and bliss, and nothing else. And only Swami I could see, and there was such sweetness about him. The one thing why I mentioned this, I saw the same two eyes which I saw in Ramana Bhagwan 2 days before in that photograph. So how do you say this is Ramana Bhagwan, this is Yogi Ramsuratkumar? I understood that moment, the content is the same, only the container looks different. In all Mahatmas, those who have experienced the ultimate truth and established in it, they are the truth, and that's the same, but the outer case may look different. There's something more to say. So I was dazed. I had no idea where I was sitting. The only thought I remembered much later was that if there is a God, He is sitting before me. Here is that. He is the one. And after that, He said, get up, get up, get up. He became very practical. And He said, get up, all the three of you. And this beggar is going to leave you because the work was done. And then He went to that heap of bottles there. He picked up one bottle. And we were all standing there. And I was watching all those. There were 17 photographs of Yogi Ramsuratkumar himself hanging next to each other on the wall. And the same photograph, framed and hanging on the wall. I was looking at it and suddenly I had a desire to get one. And in the meantime, when he went there to get, I mentioned, whispered to my friend, I want one of those. He said, sure, don't say. He will say, get out. So far, so good. Don't say. So I kept quiet. He returned and then he stood before us and he opened it. There were sugar candies in that. So all the three of us, with great expectation, we stretched our hand like this. He picked up one and then looked at the three of us like this and then put it into his own mouth. So we looked very stupid and then we thought, okay, when he put his hand into it next time, we wanted to be very smart, and so we kept our hands down there and looked straight with no expectation. He smiled again mischievously and then looked straight at me and said like this. So I stretched my hand. He really put it in my hand and then said, gestured to me to take it. So I put it into my mouth. Immediately the other two picked up. They also stretched their hand. He just looked at them very beautifully with a bewitching smile and said, no, that was only for her. And closed it and took it back to the heap. You can imagine their faces. I heard one of them grumble something. Then he started to walk in the front. He said, I'm going to leave, come. So we were also trooping behind him, like the soldiers behind a general. And suddenly when we were going to cross the threshold, he kind of swirled. There was a stack of papers. He pulled out one. We thought it was something. I had no idea. And then he said, just see this, the same photograph, which I wanted but never expressed. He said, you see this? Yes. Do you see something written there? Yes. Do you know this beggar's name? I was so much used to Ramakrishna Mutt, we used to call people Maharaj there. So I said, Ramsurat Maharaj or something. Immediately he said, no, 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 you don't know this beggar's name. See, read it. It was written Yogi Ramsuratkumar. Read it again, Yogi Ramsuratkumar. Read it again, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, 3 times. Then he said, you can keep the photo. Now again those two people asked Swami, we also, no, that's not for you. And then this beggar will give something for you. Then he took the 4 apples that I had bought. So kept one, and then he kept one for himself. And then he came out and he opened the door, let us out, and very firmly locked it behind so that we won't be tempted to come inside again. But I was in a daze. It was a euphoria which lasted nearly 10 days for me. It took me quite some time to recover from that. The mind was blank without any thoughts, but there was bliss and peace all the time. And everything that happened around registered as a detail, but there was no reaction from it. So the first time Because I'd read so much about it in Ramana literature, never experienced. It was only book experience. The very first time I went and sat in his presence, he just gave it to me in a platter, just like that. So I understood the 5 times he played that Leela, so the longing had increased, more and would become sharp, and it had prepared me for that experience. It had brought down my ego to such a low level. If there was anything left, he, by his mockery, had completed it so that I was able to receive what he gave me. And whatever I read in Ramana literature became an experience. Of course, it lasted only for a few days, but I understood there is such a state. There is indeed such a state. Jai Yogi Ramsuratkumar. This is the glory of a Mahatma. If he chooses, he can give it to you just like that in a platter.
Beautiful, Ma. Thank you so much for sharing this.
You brought it out.
Also, you have an incredible photographic memory. I'm impressed by your memory. Not everybody can recall things
My
with
God, how
such
can
a
anybody forget
precision.
all these things?
Wow, so precise. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And then you didn't say what is happened with the ambition to that which was before, when you were helpless.
Oh my God, how could anybody think of any ambition? When the highest wish is fulfilled, there can be no other wish left back. But it did happen because I had to continue working in the college. So when I got my admission in the Pondicherry University and Madurai University, two local universities, I went and asked him. I said, "Can I do my PhD? Should I do my PhD?" He kept quiet. I asked him, "Will it take me towards God?" He said, "No." And then I gave up. I even attended a few classes and all that, but I gave up. I got it with great difficulty because there was such a big panel of people, the doctorates sitting there and putting questions to me and all that. And finally, I just like that walked out.
Yeah.
So this is grace.
Yeah.
Pure, unadulterated grace. The golden grace.